In this video, we will learn how to add virtual reality or VR capabilities to our scene. This will allow your end users to experience your scene with major VR platforms.
So in this video, we want to add VR capabilities to our scene. It's probably best, though, to create a different version of your scene that you've created so far. So the one we've been working on is really just a desktop or a mobile version, a web-based version. We want to create a VR version. And so instead of just kind of changing, because we're going to change a few things in the scene for VR, so it's best if you make a duplicate. So here in the assets, or in the dashboard, if you click on drafts, you'll see that we have all of these various projects we've been working on. You see how I have actually several versions of this intro course VR. And so I've already done this once, but that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. And I'm going to call it Intro Course VR 2, because again, I already have VR 1 down there. And there it is, Intro Course VR, or Intro Course Live VR 2, or whatever you want to call it. So we're going to operate with that instead of just building on the same scene, because we want to have a few different versions of it. All right, so let's go ahead and click on this, open it up, and add VR to our scene. It's actually quite simple. You go to Import Assets. And up here at the top, really right next to our centrifugal pump, is the VR asset pack. I'm going to select that and click Add. This is going to add a VR asset pack down into our assets panel. Just like with most entities, what we're going to do is look for the entity or the hexagon icon, drag and drop that into our scene. It says VR camera rig, and then it'll populate up here in our entities panel. Once it does that, you see how it's actually, the placement is in the middle of the pump. That means is that when we would jump into VR, we would be standing in the middle of the pump. We don't want that, so we're just going to move it back a little bit. Doesn't really matter where, but just away from the pump. With my VR camera rig entity selected, I'm going to go over to my VR camera rig component and click on the current VR camera rig checkbox. It's basically saying this is the current VR camera rig. Now, that's actually all you have to do to enable VR capabilities, but we won't be able to move around, and we are not able to click on anything to make anything happen at this point. So we need to do a few other things. So first, I want to be able to teleport. I want to be able to click using my controllers around on the floor and then teleport to different spots on the floor. Pretty simple to do. I select my floor. And with it selected, I go down here to my assets panel. And you see the VR action object teleport script. See this script, that little icon? All I need to do is drag and drop that onto the inspector panel of my floor. And that's it. Now I can teleport around my floor. Great. We have one more thing to do. We want to be able to be able to click on the pump and have it expand in size, as well as be able to click on these hotspots to show those info cards. Some basic things we need to do is, first, let's be able to click on the pump to then expand it and scale it up and have it explode and that sort of thing. So I'm going to select my centrifugal pump PBR model. And also from the assets panel, we're going to click on the VR action object activate script. I'm going to drag and drop that onto my inspector panel of the pump. It adds the script component here. And this is a unique script. We actually don't even need to get in the text editor at all. All we need to do is make some changes here in the UI, or the editor of Sumerian. So the input, first of all, there's a few different options. On hover enter, on hover exit, on action button down, on action button up. So this is really a few different things. First of all, if I was to hover on it, as I would start hovering on it, it would emit a message. If I would stop hovering it, it would emit a message. If I click down on a button, it would emit a message. Or if I let up on the button, it would emit a message. The basic one we want to use is on action button down, and then we need to emit a message here. Now, if you remember, what is the message that we originally created? I will select my state machine behaviors and our click emit. If you remember, the message that is being emitted is clicked. So this one really, this behavior is for a web browser. So if I'm using it on a mobile. So if I click on it using a mouse, or I tap on it using my finger on a mobile device or a touchpad device, that is what this behavior is doing. This script that we've attached to the centrifugal pump is really going to emit the same message, and therefore emit the same message and then kick off those other behaviors like the scale and the explode behaviors, but using this script instead. So that's all we need to do. I've added this script, I've selected to be action button down, and then I've selected or made my message to be clicked, so that when I'm in VR, and it's hard to demonstrate using a web or a screencast like this, but the same result will happen. If I point my controller in VR at it, it'll emit that message, and then everything will follow. All right, great. The next thing we want to do is enable the info cards to be shown in hidden, based on some interactivity with the hotspots. The scripts that we added a few videos ago when we created these info cards are not going to quite work the same in VR, so we're going to do it a little bit different. I'm going to go down to my assets panel again. I want to show all of my scripts. And I'm going to use that same activate script and add it to a hotspot. So let's do hotspot. I'm going to drag the activate script and drag it over here. And it adds the same script that we added just a minute ago. But the input is going to be on hover enter. And it's going to emit a message. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do show card 1. Right? But we also want to be able to hide the card when we stop hovering. This is just, we're using hover as just it's a better option for VR. So that's why we're using this. So I'm going to drag another script over here and do on hover exit. And I'm going to do hide card 1. All right, so that works fine. Now we're going to create a quick state machine behavior on info card 1 that will show and hide it based on those messages. So I'm going to create a behavior. We're going to listen for show card 1. This is really similar to a behavior we made just a bit ago. And we're going to show, and then add the show behavior, show action. And then we need to add a transition action. We're going to duplicate the listen. We'll call it, change the message to hide card 1. Then we'll add state, another state, and we will call this one hide. We'll look for the hide action and also another transition action. Great. So this is working just like a lot of other things we've created, which is you click or interact with something, or in this case, hover and then hover off. It emits those messages to show and hide those cards. Now, one thing I do want to, I didn't rename this behavior, so I will call it card show hide behavior. Now, in the last 2 videos ago, we added these visibility toggles. I'm going to go ahead and remove that because I just don't want them interfering with it. And same thing with the hotspots. All I really need is these VR action object activate scripts. I'm going to do that with all of these. We now need to do the same things we just did, but for hotspot 2 and info card 2. So with hotspot 2 selected, I'm going to drag, we'll just do it quickly, 2 of them. So we have 2 instances. We'll make this one on hover enter, this one on hover exit. And the message we want to make is show card 2 and hide card 2. I'm going to go back to this behavior, the card show hide behavior, and I really should make it card 1 show hide behavior. So now I'll duplicate it so that I have a second version, and I'll change the name to card 2. And if you can imagine, the only things we need to change are these messages to show card 2 and hide card 2. The other thing we want to make sure is that because we remove those scripts that don't, the scripts that automatically hide the cards, we want to make sure that the cards are hidden from the start. So I'm going to click my hide state and set it as the initial action. And we'll do that same thing for the other behavior. And that's how you add VR capabilities. If you wanted to go ahead and test this out on a VR headset, the best thing we recommend is that you first want to republish or publish your scene to begin with, and then you take that unique URL that we created and take it into a URL shortener to make it easier to pull up when you're inside a VR headset. As you can imagine, it would be a little bit cumbersome to try to enter in all of this whole string into a URL inside of VR. So that's why if you use a URL shortener, it makes it a lot easier. But that's really the basics of adding VR capabilities to our scene. In the next video and final video of this series, we're going to show you how to create this same scene in AR, augmented reality. Thanks for watching, and I hope you join us in the next video.
Thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments of this video. If you haven't already, please join also our Sumerian community on Slack at slack.sumerian.world.